Hey everybody, it's Brandon. Today we're going to talk about living by a code. But first, I just got this big package here. These are my sketchbooks for Sketchbook Summer, so I want to kind of crack them open and take a look inside. All right, let's see what we got here. I know when most people do unboxings, they don't usually do it for their own stuff, but that's what we're doing today. So if any of you are unfamiliar with Sketchbook Summer, I've got some videos that explain what it is. I'll link those. Basically, it's this art challenge where you challenge yourself within the course of a month to fill a sketchbook. And I recommend a 150-page sketchbook. So what I did when I finished is I just put together kind of a collection of my favorite art and just kind of some of the lessons I learned from doing the challenge. So let me pull one of these out. Let's look at this. So this is the finished book. Yeah, it looks nice. Got like a nice like wraparound cover on it. And then we got here 62 full color pages. And like I said before, it's not just sketchbooks. I've got notes in here that kind of talk about the particular lessons that I learned from doing Sketchbook Summer this year. So anyway, I just got these back from the printers. I'm really happy with how they turned out. I think you guys really like them. So if you want to pick up a copy, there's going to be a link below in the description, or maybe even in the side here. You can go to sketchbooksummer.com, go to the store there. Yeah, and I hope you like it. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So anyway, there's this. Without further ado, let's talk about living by your code. Hey everybody, it's Brandon. I'm here today in my office, which I should probably do some sort of workspace / studio tour at some point. But that's not what we're doing today. Today we are talking about this. This is my code, and I want to talk about why you should have a code too. So several weeks back, I did this video on why we need art, and I talk about chaos and the importance of chaos. So since then, I've been kind of contemplating chaos, the importance of it, but also kind of the problems it can cause. You know, when you look at your life and you're trying to re-engineer every factor of your life and every factor of society and change things and reinvent things, it can kind of become overwhelming. You have to be strategic about where you direct your chaotic energies. So the realization I've come to is that in order to create art effectively and in order to create chaos effectively, you need some order in your life. And this has become particularly true in my situation where I don't have a boss, I don't really have any deadlines, and I don't have any really real accountability. So I need a certain amount of order in my life just to be productive. I mean, there is such a thing as having too much freedom. So with that in mind, I've written a code for myself, and it draws from really two sources of inspiration. The first is Henry Miller's Rules from Work. I was introduced to this a couple years back through Stephen Pressfield's blog, and it's this fantastic short little list of rules for Henry Miller that just helps him to make the best art he can make. You'll notice my list is longer if you compare it with his. I'll include a link to his. His might be 8 or 10 things, and I've got like 17, so I plan on kind of editing mine down and refining it as I kind of test it out. But there's one phrase in particular from his rules that has really stuck with me, and so I actually included that in my rules. And you'll kind of find that reading someone else's code can be really helpful for you for developing your own code. So check out Henry Miller's, check out mine. I'll share mine with you too as you're developing your own. The other source of inspiration was my friend Kevin Cross's My War series, which is this great series where Kevin just talks about this Spartan code he adopts just to bring some more order and productivity to his life. And it's interesting, our code shares some similar things. They both talk about exercise, they both talk about cold exposure, and there's both kind of like a schedule embedded in there. And it's funny because I know that Kevin mentioned that he lost some subscribers when he did his My War series, which is funny to me because, and I think the complaint was that, you know, what does this have to do to art? But for me, this has everything to do with art. For a lot of the reasons I've already mentioned. But like, yeah, how you live your life, the discipline you have in your life, completely affects the things that you are able to produce and to create. So it's important to note that this code is not asking me to do anything heroic. Everything I have on here is all about giving myself little nudges, just a little bit of push in the right direction of things that I know if I just make little changes, they're going to have big differences on how the rest of my day goes. It's also important to note that this doesn't include stuff that I'm already going to do throughout the course of my day. I have all sorts of responsibilities. I've got kids to take care of. I've got pets to take care of. I've got a home, family, and, volunteer work that I do. I know that I'm going to do all those things anyway, so I don't need to include those in my code. It's also important to note that these rules are based on what works for me. I made a video a few months back called The Secret to Productivity that just talks about you need to develop your own approach to productivity based on your own strengths and weaknesses. The same thing applies to this code. Build a code based on what works for you. Of course, it can totally help to start with mine or start with Henry Miller's or Kevin's. But at the end of the day, you should refine it and build something that's suited for you. Lastly, it's incredibly important that you write your code down and put it someplace where you can read it regularly. I put it next to my desk and I read through it every single day. I also wrote it by hand, and this kind of just gave me an additional opportunity to contemplate it and internalize it and kind of embed it in my memory a little bit better. So with that in mind, I'm going to share with you the specifics of my code. Meditation first every day, no matter the circumstances. If you get up early, do 30 minutes. If you're short on time, do 20. Don't let your anxiety about your day convince you to skip it. Okay, I've found that starting my day with meditation is probably the best way to just get my mind focused and to clear it and to just be ready to start working. I've also found that meditation is the best way to learn to deal with distraction. That's basically what you're doing with meditation, is you're learning how to refocus your mind after a distraction. 2, cold is your friend. Cold showers and biking in the winter, ice baths in the summer. Make it cold enough that you crave heat afterwards. 3 days in a row, then take a break. So a lot of things here that are specific to me that I've kind of found that work for me, but the general idea is that in general though, I found that cold exposure is a great way to kind of energize myself, and the effects are more long lasting than you might suppose. Of course, you have to deal with being cold afterwards, but I've kind of gotten used to that. Just a warning, if you do want to try this, make sure you read up on it and understand kind of the risk before you do it. I don't want to be responsible for anyone like dying of hypothermia. 3, intense exercise. Do whatever exercise you want to and make sure you get in at least 2 sprint workouts per week. Biking to work doesn't count. I have all sorts of things I love to try with exercise. I've done yoga, I've done calisthenics, weights, running, biking. The thing I found that's had the most positive effect on my mood is sprint workouts. And so you'll kind of notice maybe a theme here. I kind of have 2 challenges with work. One is kind of energy level. I'm generally kind of a very depressed, low energy person, and like the cold and the intense exercise, those are both things that kind of help to like raise my energy level. And the other thing you'll notice is kind of this focus and dealing with distraction theme, which is kind of where meditation came in. So you'll see that kind of reoccur as I go through this list more. Number 4, work at the office. So this is another one of these like getting rid of distractions things. Working at home is not always unproductive, but it is always the place where you get most distracted. If you're going to waste a day, chances are it will happen at home. So I have a little office at a co-working space, and it seems to increase my productivity by quite a bit. So number 5, look for opportunities to collaborate, commit, and create deadlines. Use your freedom to choose the work you do, not to put off completing work. Make your work part of something bigger than yourself. Don't create art in a bubble. Yeah, this is something really interesting I've discovered, that just by having a commitment, something like a deadline or even something else, someone that I'm working with, it helps me to not like procrastinate things. When I'm doing something with my own invented deadlines with no real accountability, it's really easy to put things off to the next day. So, collaborating, committing, working with other people seems to be this really simple way that I kind of increase my productivity day to day. Number 6, warm up with 30 minutes of something that has nothing to do with work. So I've actually had some time to test these rules since I wrote them, and I kind of found that 30 minutes is a little bit too much. I really only need 10 minutes. And part of that is because usually the 10 minutes kind of naturally expands into more time. But also sometimes I'm just tight on time and I don't need to fill up a day necessarily with 30 minutes every day. And sometimes 10 minutes is plenty to kind of explore and kind of get warmed up. Number 7, follow the admonition of Henry Miller. Work calmly, joyfully, recklessly on whatever is in hand. I could do a whole video just on this quote. I think it's the best way to approach any work that you're doing, to not get frazzled, to not get stressed out, to learn to enjoy it, and to just be totally reckless and do it with insane abandon. You'll just find that's the best way. That's the kind of mindset when you produce the best work. Well, at least it is for me. Number 8, the hardest times to start working are at the beginning of the day and after lunch. If you can win these 2 battles, you can win the day. The first half hour is always the hardest. Fight the urge to seek out distractions, accept the boredom, and let your body relax into the groove. So again, we got this theme of distraction, and usually there's a kind of low energy thing to deal with as well. But one thing I'm experimenting with a little bit with these is like doing a quick nap after lunch. And I'm still kind of trying to figure out how well that works, but that seems to be kind of helpful. So that might be something I'll add to my rules. 9, limit social media to small blocks of time per day, just enough to use it for your purposes. Use blocking software to keep yourself in line. So I am pretty strict about how little I use social media, just because I can get very, very caught up in it. It's probably the worst compulsion, the worst addiction I have is just getting wrapped up in social media. So I have to really limit when I use it, and have to make sure I have a very clear purpose when I do use it. So I use some different blocking softwares. If you're interested in knowing what I use, I can definitely share that with you guys. Number 10, avoid video games, especially anything multiplayer or by Blizzard. Platformers, anything with an end, or stuff you can play with kids is better. I find that the complexity and challenge of video games, especially multiplayer video games, kind of creates this false sense of accomplishment for me. It helps me to it allows me to fulfill these desires I have in ways that are not really productive. I would rather fulfill those in ways where I can grow and where I can actually produce things rather than just paying Blizzard. That being said, I found that there are certain type of video games that I don't get quite as wrapped up in and don't get quite as addicted to. Like I said, kind of platformers, things like Metroid, stuff I can play with the kids. That tends to be stuff that I can untangle myself from much more easily. Okay, number 11, be cautious about watching TV. It's great while penciling and inking, but it's easy to get wrapped up and start binging at other times. I need to figure out this rule a little bit better because this really is not giving me that great of guideline. For the time being, I don't have any streaming accounts. No Netflix, no Hulu, no HBO. I'm watching very little TV at all. And for the most part, just having no TV seems to be very effective to me. It's opening a lot of other time in my life. I find that when I have the option to watch TV, I generally tend to choose that instead of choosing other things that I'd rather be doing. And I'll talk about some of those other things. 12, pat yourself on the back after a good day of work. This just comes into that category of just kind of being positive with myself and not allowing myself to have too much negativity in my life. It can be really easy to look at a day and have kind of like a glass half empty, or even like a glass 10% empty attitude about the day. If you start the day with a checklist and you don't finish 100% of that checklist, it can be easy to say what a failure, what a crummy day. I didn't finish 100% of the list, rather than focusing on the fact that you did finish 80% or 90%. So that's what I try to do. I just try to, celebrate when I have a good day and when I accomplish something and get some stuff done. 13, consider carefully any commitments that could take your focus away from work. So if you watch my video about regret, you'd know that I have this challenge I deal with quite a bit with just getting interested in too many things, committing to too many things, and how that can just stress me out and it can decrease my focus. So, you know, I just have to be very careful about any time I say yes to something. And this is something I need to get better at. And this is another one of those rules where I could make more specifics to it. I mean, maybe something I'll add to this later is like, don't work on more than one big project at a time. I mean, even 2 projects at a time is tough. It's doable, but I find if I have more than 2 large projects I'm working on simultaneously, it just gets way out of control for me. 14, enjoy your time with family after work. Eat together, play together, go on adventures, say yes, take time to talk with Annie about life. Watch a movie if you can get the kids into bed at time. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, honestly, having a family can be a lot of work and it can feel like a drag. I mean, it's like getting up in the morning, getting the kids ready for school, then you're coming home, you're making dinner, putting the kids to bed. And I think it's important to really try and just focus on enjoying that time you have together as a family, to be willing to be more adventurous. I mean, this gets back to the Facebook stuff and the TV stuff. Sometimes those can be easy ways just to check out and just not to deal with kind of the stress of life. And it's better to kind of more like lean into the challenges, to accept more of the stress. And some of that means like saying yes more time, going on more adventures, doing more fun stuff. So something I'm trying to concentrate more on. 15, the computer and the phone are the enemies of life and work. Put them away. So this gets back to all social media, all the TV stuff. It is so easy to be addicted to a screen and get tied up and wrapped into it. And so we have just rules in our home about when computers and phones should not be out. So basically after dinner, we try not to have computers and phones out. And it's a constant battle. There's always some excuse to have them out. So it's good I'm going through this today because it's a good reminder that we need to do better. 16, read books, comic books, books with interesting ideas, old books written by men wearing bed sheets, children's books written in foreign languages, books with stories, read one at a time. So the nice thing about not watching TV and getting off of Facebook and other social media is it just opens up this time that I like to use for reading. So right now I kind of have this cycle that I go through where I try to read like one nonfiction. I try to read one fiction book. I try to read like one book in a foreign language, usually Spanish. I can read some really simple French children's books, so kind of practicing that a little bit too. And then I try to read a comic book too. So that's kind of my cycle. I try to cycle through that order, and it seems to be the best way to spend my time. And I just love the stuff I learn and experience from reading. 17, sometimes you feel shitty before bed and think that staying up later will somehow solve the problem. It won't. Just go to bed. This one's really personal and specific to me. I just, nighttime, after putting the kids to bed, I just sometimes feel trashed. And sometimes I'm like a toddler. Toddlers, they get like super grumpy and throw tantrums when they're tired, and they just like won't even admit they're tired. Sometimes that's me. I feel horrible at night just because I'm tired. I need to go to bed. And if I don't recognize that, then I end up, staying up till midnight playing Hearthstone or being on social media or whatever. So this is a good one for me to recognize. Maybe you're the same. So anyway, those are my rules. I'm probably going to be updating and editing this list as I have a chance to kind of test it out and see what works. But I'd be interested in your thoughts. Do you have a code? Do you do something similar? What works for you? Any other insights or comments, you can leave them in the comments below. And if you like this video, I've got lots more videos like this. I've got over 50 videos now that I've produced. They're all about art, how to make art, how to deal with the emotional craziness of making art, how to be productive. So please check out my channel, dig more deeply into those. I think you'll find some other stuff that you like. Please subscribe, please like this video, and we'll talk to you next time.